we're having an election because, not because of the budget and all the other reasons that Mr. Harper is giving. We're having an election because Mr. Harper was found by the Speaker to be failing to produce the necessary documents, the necessary information that would allow the Canadian people to know what's going on and would allow the Canadian Parliament to make up its mind on some very critical issues. And you know, Mr. Flaherty said, oh, you know, these are just procedural matters. You know, well, Charles I lost his head because of procedural matters. These are actually pretty important issues. They're pretty basic to our what our country is all about, what democracy is all about. And then I heard the rest of it on the news that night where Mr. Harper announced this great tax change. You know, the pooling of taxes, or middle-class tax cut, everybody's saying, oh, this sounds great. Then you realize there were actually quite a few catches in it. The first catch, of course, was that you had to vote for him not just once, but probably twice, and give him that majority twice, which is what I call long-term planning. It's quite a lot of nerve to sort of say, this is what they're going to. And the second thing is there has to be a balanced budget. And I thought to myself, I said, it's interesting, you know, they gave a tax break to the corporations on January the 1st to cut their income tax rate from 18% to 16.5%, and they reaffirmed that they're going to go onwards from 16.5 to 15 next year. So that tax break has been given. Because we all know in our own lives, once you make a priority of something, something else falls away. Something else says, well, that's going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait for that. And I just think when we look at this campaign, it actually isn't very complicated. Do you want to have an honest government? And do you want to have a government that puts people first? And those, it seems to me, are the choices that we face. And that's where I think we as Liberals have got to really, the last 10 days of this campaign, and these are the moments of choice in an election. I mean, we all know it. We all know that when you knock, there's all those people who've been undecided and said, I'm not sure where I'm going, I'm leaning this way, I'm leaning that way. Well, there comes a time when you just have to close the deal. And this is the week when we close the deal. And I think the simplest way to close it is to talk in the way I just described. Because this question of honesty is not just a sidebar issue. This question of democracy is not a sidebar issue. It is at the core of the problem that we have. And the priorities that we provide are really, really important for working families as we go forward. Now, the last thing I wanted to say is about this whole question of, you know, what about the NDP and the Greens and other people? And I think we're not quite sure the phenomena. You'll see the polls going up and down, and I certainly know something about that. I mean, there was a time when I was in politics when you know, my mother wasn't returning my calls. She wasn't taking them. And you know how things can go up. You can be very popular one day and not the next day. These things come and go and change. But the important point for us now is to realize that in a riding like this one, it's critically important for us to say to those people who might be thinking about voting NDP, not to say, you know, that's a terrible thing to do, you should never do that, but just to say to people, look, 2 elections ago, Mr. Layton went around and said to people, to Liberals in particular, he says, I want to borrow your vote. Remember that? He said the last week of the campaign, he said, I want to borrow your vote. Well, my view is the message this time should be, Jack, you borrowed the votes, now we want them back. And we want very much, and that is that we want Liberals to come back, because we all know what happened in the last election, people staying home, people not voting, people not connecting with us, and deciding that they were not going to come to us. And we simply have to do everything we can to get that Liberal vote back, to talk to people about why it's important. This is the critical time. That's really why I wanted to be here, because it's so important for us to realize that when we realize how close we were in just a couple of years ago, and how we did hold this riding in the past, and how strong we've been here, there's absolutely no reason why we can't win it again, why we can't pull people together, why we can't move people to come, and why we can't build up the strength of the Liberal